What up, YouTube? Welcome to the next animatronic project video. It's been a while since I actually made a project video on this guy, and I actually got into a point where I'm running them a lot more with the equipment that I have, so I can just run them a lot. And running them in the shed has two challenges. The first challenge is that I live in Florida, and the shed's aluminum all the way around, and it's like a hot box in here. During the day, it's 100 degrees out, 100 degrees in here, and you have to keep the door open and what have you. Another challenge is with the compressor in the shed here, it's really loud, and if you know me in real life, you know that I kind of have hearing damage, and certain things will activate the ringing in my ears, and that compressor is one of them. I cannot stand it. So what I've been doing is I've been putting the compressor outside of the shed, closing the door and running the hoses underneath the door in here to kind of keep it a little more quieter, but then it's hot in here. So basically I want to move this guy inside so I can actually work on him inside comfortably, and I can run shows sitting down comfortably, but I don't want to have the compressor in there because the compressor's real loud, so I want to leave the compressor out here in the shed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run an air hose from the shed to the house so that I have them inside, and then I can have the compressor out here and I don't have to worry about the noise or anything. So, and as far as the equipment I bought to do this, I don't know if it's going to be adequate. I assume it is going to be adequate to run this character, but I don't know. It's going to be an experiment. You never know if you're going to have enough flow or what have you. But the stuff I bought because I either got a good deal on it, because I have a budget, or I had other limitations. So the biggest thing is the air hose that's going to run from the shed to the house. So my dad and I, shortly after I bought the house, installed a conduit from the shed to the house so we could run Cat 5 cable to the shed so I could install security cameras. So that's the conduit that I'm going to utilize to run the airline. And the largest size hose I could get in there was 1/2-inch outside diameter hose. So I found this, it's polyurethane plastic tubing, which is the same. I use polyurethane tubing on the figure. So this is 1/2-inch OD by 3/8 ID. So hopefully we'll get enough flow. Now the whole Rockafire show, when it's installed, gets a 1-inch airline to feed the whole show. So I'm hoping that this 3/8 ID airline will be adequate enough for one figure, and eventually I might have two figures if I ever get Billy Bob up and running, which I haven't touched at all. So I'm gonna run this from the house to the shed, and that's what this video is all going to be about, was trying to hook up running the airline and trying to get all the right connections to make it on both ends, to plug it into the valves and to plug it into the compressor. So let's go. Okay, so we're here in my laundry room. This is where I'm going to bring the airline up into the house. Oh yeah, just so you guys know, I live in a mobile home, so I have a crawl space underneath my house. But anyway, this is the laundry room, and I'm going to bring the airline up through the laundry room floor. So the biggest identification that I have when I get underneath the house is this dryer vent line. So I'm going to measure where the dryer vent is in relation to the corner of the wall, because I'm going to try to drill up and bring that air hose closest to the corner as possible. The funny part is we have this blank plate here. That'd be kind of neat to bring it up through there, but I think that'll be too difficult. And I'm going to drill the hole from the underneath up, because I don't know where any of the cross braces are. And if I'm underneath there, I can see where the cross braces are and just drill straight up through the plywood. But I gotta go and figure out where's the wall at in relation to this dryer vent. Okay, so this is under my mobile home. right here, this conduit right here is the one that my dad and I put in, and that goes straight to the shed. And as you can see, I have 3 Cat 5 cables going through it. And I have a pull line going through it too, which makes it nice for pulling it in. And I'm just gonna run the air hose straight down this beam here where all the Ethernet cable is. And hopefully I can find the dryer vent. Now the thing is, oh, you know what? The dryer vent's probably on this side of the house. But that's what I'm gonna have to figure out once I get there. And just hopefully I'm gonna try to do it all in one shot. Bring everything I need, climb down there, bring their air hose with me, drill the hole up through, and shove the hose up through. So we'll see if that's easy or not. Okay, I think I'm ready to do this. I have 2 flashlights. I have a drill with a 1/2-inch drill bit at the end, and the hose is 1/2-inch outside diameter, so hopefully it should be perfect size. I like using this bit because it helps me get away from my work. I unraveled the hose. It's 100 feet of hose, which should be plenty. I unraveled the hose in a way that it's not gonna kink, and both ends of the hose I covered with tape to prevent contaminants from getting in the hose. I have my tape measure with me to measure, and I have protection with me. I have seen black racer snakes under the house, which here in Florida it's good to have black racer snakes under the house, so you don't have any water moccasins under your house. Or cottonmouth is what they used to call them up north, but down here everyone calls them water moccasins. And the snakes aren't really active this time of year. It's the spring that they're really active, you can see them. But still, there could be a snake underneath. So I have this, I'll bring it with me. So that should be everything. Hopefully I can do this in one shot. Oh yeah, I'm gonna get tie wraps too. So I'm gonna bring the hose with me and feed it through those metal cross beams. Go underneath there, find where to drill the hole, shove the hose up through, make sure I shove plenty of hose so I can use it up through, and then on the way back I'll tie wrap it some, so then if I have any air surging, the hose just won't whip around. So on the next shot you'll hear if I'm successful or not. Okay, I drilled a hole, but I'm hoping it was in the right spot. So I'm gonna check it for the first time. Okay, we made it. Now it's not directly in the corner. The reason it's not directly in the corner is because there's actually, oh, we're starting to fog up a little bit. The main I-beam for the trailer was blocking directly in the corner, so I got it as close to the I-beam as I can. So, I mean, I could have gotten it closer to this wall, but can't go back now. I just couldn't shove the, what do you call it? And you see I tore the carpet up some, it wrapped the carpet up. I couldn't shove the hose up through, so I got to wall that hose out a little more and shove the hose up through. Okay, mission was successful. So hopefully that's the hardest part of running this air hose. Okay, the next step is to run it from the house through the conduit to the shed. So I got this pull line that I left in there. Right here. And I got some new pull line to pull back through, so I still have a pull line through when I'm all done. So I stretched this thing out straight, and I very carefully brought it back over here in a loop. So hopefully it won't get tangled up. So here's the end. I'm going to take off this masking tape because I'm going to use electrical tape. I ended up having to take the masking tape off when I push it up through the floor. And so I'm going to have to try to pump air through it to try to
blow all the debris out, but it was only the very last step that I had to take the masking tape off because the hole was so tight. But that's good. I wanted the hole that tight because now I can put masking tape around the air hose and shove it in that hole to make a nice tight seal so ants and bugs won't climb through. I also found a doormat underneath there, and I found a broken pair of safety glasses underneath there. So I pulled both of them up. Okay, so basically, I'm just going to kind of wrap it around here so it puts tension around it. Key is we want to do this careful enough that I don't break any of the Ethernet wires going through that pipe. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some Dawn dish soap, lube this up, push in the pipe, pull some of the line, push in the pipe, pull some of the line until I get it. It's a very short run and it only has 2 90s in it, so it shouldn't be a big deal. Okay, I got it. I guess it could have been worse. I ended up, the line that was on this side, I ended up breaking it off because the tubing got stuck at one point. So what I ended up doing is I pulled the tubing out and I had no line on this side, but the tubing had enough, like the whole entire time the tubing was self-feeding itself over on that end. So I took a piece of cardboard and I folded it over itself to make a nice clean lip to get past the connector in the conduit, and sure enough I was able to push it up all the way through. But I did put a lot of dish detergent down in this conduit and I put a little water in there to lube it up. So I'm going to go and blow an air hose in the conduit on that other side to try to see if I can get the water up. So I'll film that. That should be interesting. Hopefully that cleared it up some. I was just afraid that of this cable sitting down there in that water when they're not rated to be waterproof. But to tell you the truth, there's probably water already in that conduit because this seal wasn't the best. But actually, I'll go and check my cameras now, make sure that all the cameras in the shed are safe. And I had one casualty. If you're a really good fan of my videos, you know that Adidas Dragons are the best shoes ever made, but they don't make them anymore. So this is my pair of Adidas Dragons that I well wore, but they were too worn out. So these have been turned into my yard work shoes. And I put them on today because I was crawling under the house and I knew it was going to get dirty, but look, they finally separated. Luckily, I stockpiled Adidas Dragons. So currently I'm wearing a pair of white ones, all white ones, which I think look ridiculous, not my style, but the shoe, Adidas Dragon's the best shoe ever made, so it's worth it. And then I have one brand new pair of black ones in my stockpile. Okay, so I tried to shove this hose up through this LB, and it kinked. But luckily, and believe it or not, I thought ahead about that. So I already had a 1/2 inch push connector elbow to shove in here, 90 degrees, to go through this LB. And actually, a couple months ago when I realized that I wanted to run air to the house, I went ahead and I ordered everything I needed to make all the connections. So as we're doing this project, we're going to see if I was able to think ahead enough about all the fittings for everything I wanted to do to make all the connections. So I already cut the hose and I realized, oh, I probably should document this. So you just push it on. So this is a hose I kinked. It looks all right though, so we'll leave it like that. I almost need 2 people for this because I don't want to kink the hose anymore. Let me get this started. Okay, I didn't have it in all the way, so I'm gonna have to like try to hold it, or I'm gonna put the cover on and then try to push it in so it makes a good connection. Oh yeah, and the cool part is, even though I broke the line because I pulled a new line up, I have a new line. Although this conduit is pretty much full, 3 Cat 5s in this hose, I wouldn't want to put anything else in it. If for some reason I wanted another Ethernet cable, it might fit. But at that point, it might be worth putting a switch in. Which I was planning on doing because these cameras, I had to divide them on the power over Ethernet because it's such a long run that the cameras will cut out real easy. So in reality, I should have power over Ethernet injectors in my shed, and then that way it'll be a shorter distance. Okay. I put the cover on the back of that LB and then I pushed on the hose and I felt it seat. But we won't know until we air it up and check it for leaks. But the good news is it looks like I have just the right amount of hose. 100 feet was just enough to do what the way I wanted to route it. Okay, so the hardest part is definitely behind me. I want to take a little break and catch my breath a little bit. Since I don't have to crawl underneath the house anymore or do any hard work. And I thought I would just take this time to go through the 2 project boxes I have. So I hobby hop a lot, so I get a lot of unfinished projects. So I put unfinished projects in their own box and label it and put it to the side. So for the running the airline in the house project, I had 2 boxes. So I thought I would just go through, show you what I got, and explain. There needs to be a little bit of a backstory before I dive into the next part I'm going to try to do. So, basically in this box, I have an assortment of fittings. Like I have quick disconnect, and the hose is 1/2 inch outside diameter. So like I have a pack of 5, 90-degree swivel elbow male, 1/2 inch diameter to 1/2 inch male national pipe thread. Bought a 5-pack of those. And like I said, in my mind I laid out how I was going to route all the hoses and what connectors I need. So hopefully I have all the connectors. So like I said, I have these quick disconnect hoses. I have an adapter for 1/2 inch male national pipe thread to, it's cut off, but it must be to 1/4 inch or 3/8. I don't know. I forget. I have a ball valve with 1/2 inch national pipe thread on both sides. Another quick disconnect, and that's pretty much all in here. And then in this box are 2 things I got from eBay. So this is used stock. It's a regulator. So currently I've been using the regulator on the air compressor to regulate the bot down to, and I've been running it at 50 or 55 psi. I gotta check. I forget. That's what I've been running a single character as. I know everyone has their own opinion on what to set the pressure to, but
from the adjustments of the flow controls I got, it seems like 50 or 55 psi, whatever I had it set to, was adequate. But since it's going to be such a long run from the air source to the laundry room, we want that to be, and it's only going through a 3/8 inch inside diameter hose. We want to have high pressure on that hose so we get more supply. So we want to regulate it closer to the figure. So I'm going to actually have this in the house, and I searched around. At work we use these SMC, which SMC makes really cool. The way they have their stuff set up to connect together is kind of cool. So at work I'm used to using this. So I went on eBay to do find surplus of this, and I found this assembly. And this assembly is neat because it has a cutoff valve, and the cutoff valve actually exhausts the air out this side and out this little manifold here. But I thought this was cool because it had a cutoff valve. So in the house, because as you know, Pasquale leaks quite a bit. So to keep instead of having to come all the way out to the garage and shut off the air compressor or unplug the hose for the air compressor to cut off, I can just cut it off in the laundry room there and let the air compressor build back up. The other reason I got this was because it was all one unit and it came with a wall mount. So I'm going to actually have this mounted on the wall in my laundry room. And it's just a regular air regulator with 1/2 inch NPT fittings on both sides. This side and this side is 1/2 inch NPT. And now the part that probably needs more explanation. I have a single water trap with 1/2 inch NPT fittings, and this is actually new stock, but I got it surplus. So air dryers. I've never ran an air dryer before because as a hobbyist, you really don't need to run an air dryer. Why do you need to run an air dryer? You need to run an air dryer to get to dry out the air, get the humidity out of the air. And the reason you need to do that is mostly due to temperature changes. When you compress air, it creates heat, and freshly compressed air is hot. So everything's fine as long as that freshly compressed air is hot. The moisture is going to stay vaporized in the air. But what happens is, as soon as that compressed air cools down, it condensates, and you get water in your airline. That's why, me personally, when I'm not using this compressor, the water drain at the bottom, I leave it open and just leave it open so there's no pressure in the tank because I'm in Florida, so it's high humidity. So before, I was running Pasquale with just a single, 12 or 15 foot line, and the compressor was always pumping. The air never had time to cool down, and I didn't have them in any permanent situation. I was always moving the airline and stuff, so I didn't even have to worry about an air dryer. But the thing is, now the air compressor is going to be located far away from the where it's actually going to be utilized at. So that's one thing that would cause the air to cool down and condensate. Another thing that would cause the air to cool down and condensate is the fact that the air compressor is going to be in this hot shed. The airline's then going to go underground. So underground is naturally going to cool because the ground is an insulator. And then it's going to be utilized in my house, which is AC, so it's going to be cool in there. So by the time there's going to be water galore in the airlines. But at the same time, I don't feel like buying an air dryer. They're way too expensive. So what does an air dryer do? An air dryer basically cools down the air inside the unit and then traps the water that the already cooled down air. It condensates and then it traps the water, preventing the water from traveling farther down the line. That's all an air dryer does. It's an AC unit and it has coils in it or whatever to cool down the airline and a water trap, and it opens up every 5 minutes and spits the water out of the water trap. So I'm going to do a poor man's air dryer, and this is purely an experiment. It's purely an experiment. Now, the one thing that scares me about my setup is, as I said, the airline's going in the ground. So the ground is the lowest part, and the water is always going to condensate or accumulate to the lowest part of the line, and it's going to be underground, and I won't have access to it. It's in that conduit. If water gets in it, I would have to probably open the airline up in the house, because I wouldn't want to make a mess in the house, and then blow compressed air in that line and hope to blow that airline out into the shed here, just like I blew the water and soap out of that conduit. So I do want to try to prevent that. And the way I'm going to prevent that is I'm going to have the line leaving the air compressor. Before it gets into the conduit, it's going to go right next to ice packs. I'm going to cool ice packs and put them right next to the airline. So it's only going to be used when I'm using the figure, which is no big deal. When I know that I'm going to run the figure, I'm just going to fill bags up with ice and then put it up against the line. And then I'm going to have it come down, and at the very bottom next to the floor, before it goes in the conduit, I'm going to have this water trap. So the idea is that the bags of ice is going to cool down the air. The water is going to condensate, and it's going to accumulate in this water trap. And then it's going to go into the conduit and into my house. So hopefully I'll be trapping all the water in this water trap and not be trapping it in the conduit underground. So I hope that makes sense. I know my weakness is using the right terminology. I've always been like that. I don't talk. I've been told that I don't talk tactfully, and I know I don't talk adequately. That's just the way I am. So hopefully that all makes sense. That's what I'm going to be doing next, is routing the line and hooking up this water trap. Okay, so first thing we need to do is put the 2 half-inch elbows on the water trap. So they have a little goop thing they come with, but I don't trust that, so I'm going to put on some thread tape. For those of you who don't know, the only secret to thread tape is you want to put it on so that when you want to put it on with the thread, so that when you screw it in, it doesn't want to push the thread tape away. It wants to work it down in there. And so you turn it like this, so you want to put it with the threads. So then that way, the end piece that you're going to break off, that way when you turn it, that end piece is going with the thread, so it's not going to wind off. It's going to try to wind back on. Let me get it started, and then let me see if I can guess this. It's a pretty big one. 1/2 inch, 9/16. 5/8. I want to guess 5/8. Or hold on. No, it's not 3/4. I was way off. Hold on. I was way off. Actually, I'm going to have to use an adjustable because I don't have the right size wrench. The only thing you gotta be careful about using adjustable is especially if you have brass fittings, it's not adjustable isn't a 6-point, so it doesn't hug the thread, the nut all the way. So if you're using brass fittings, it's easy to strip out. Now let me test this. Oh yeah, so the elbow swivels no matter how tight it is. Oh, I gotta be careful. be careful what I'm putting pressure on. Okay, that'll be good. We'll see if it leaks. And when you use an adjustable, you always want to use it so that like the angle of it goes like that. That way the pressure is on the solid side. If you use it like this and you're trying to push it on, all the pressure is going to be on the jaw side. So most of you probably already know that, but I know there's some people who watch my videos that they're not that mechanically inclined, so I thought I would just try to make this as educational as possible. Okay, so we're all set to go. Okay, so they actually make a wall mount for this, which I don't have, and I was too cheap to buy it because I figured I had a 3D printer and I can always 3D print a mount, which is true, but I wasn't planning too far ahead to design a mount before I did this. So I'm going to try to figure out where I'm going to sit it, and then later on I'm going to 3D print it. So the problem is I kind of keep a bike here, so I want to keep it back in the post. I mean, I can always make a 3D printed mount that goes on this 2x4 and hugs it like this. So we'll just say we're going to leave it like that. And this water trap does have a directional arrow. So pressure comes in from the left and goes out the right when you're looking at it from the label. So this is going out. So we might actually want to sit it backwards. And I guess that'll be nice, and that'll keep enough hose. So I actually have hose cutters. You can use a razor blade, but hose cutters you want to have as much of a 90-degree cut as possible, and hose cutters makes that possible. And I think these hose cutters, 1/2 inch is the maximum hose they'll do. So you just push it down in, and it grabs a hold. So then we take the other side, and we push it in the other side. There we go, now the water trap's in. We'll leave the water trap sit like that for now. And actually, if I want to make my hose neater, I should have had the hose on the other side. There we go. Okay, to give you some reference, the hose and the water trap is right down here at the corner of the store. So obviously I don't want to trip over that hose all the time, so I want to route it up over the door. Plus I figured I'd hang my bags of ice on these pegboards up against the hose. So I have tie wrap, and I'm going to try to tie wrap it up to this pegboard that's in my shed. Another tech tip: if you don't have a pair of flush cutters, get one, because they're useful for so many things. When you're doing just soldering circuit boards to cut off the leads, you want to use flush cutters to get a good cut. And on tie wraps, you want to use flush cutters. The reason you want to use tie wraps on flush cutters on tie wraps, is because you can get in there and cut it right up against the cut. And flush cutters makes a nice soft square cut that's doesn't have any edges that's going to cut you. If you use a pair of diagonal cutters, you'll never get it as flush as that. A diagonal cutters makes the end of the tie wrap real sharp. So if you're putting tie wraps in places that you're sticking your hands in all the time, you end up cutting the back of your hands with the tie wraps. But if you cut it with flush cutters, you won't do that. So, at work, I always try to use flush cutters to be mindful of my other technicians, but I can't tell you how many times I stuck my hands in something at work and someone else came behind and cut the tire out real sharp, and then you cut the back of your hand. And then it just makes for a bad day. Or it's one of those things where you're working and you don't realize you cut yourself till afterwards, and you're like, how did I cut myself? And then if you want to complain about it, you can't complain about it because your work has you got to be wearing safety gloves 100% of the time. So if you get cut, you should have been wearing your safety gloves, even though it's hard to work with gloves on. Okay, I'm done with that rant. Let's go ahead and route the hose up there. Okay, we're ready to try to make the connection of the air compressor. The air compressor has this quick disconnect fitting that, off the top of my head, I forget what size it is. It's a so-and-so quick disconnect. I forget what size it is. I always get confused. So the one thing about quick disconnect fittings is one side, your male side, doesn't have any kind of check valve or anything, so it's just going to dump all the air out if you unplug it. The female side has a ball in it that seals it off so the air doesn't dump out, because if it didn't, when I unhook this, all the air out of the tank will dump out. But when I do unhook this, the air that is stored in this hose is going to dump out. So you'll hear that. And as you can see, there was all that air in the hose. So what I decided to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a valve on this side, and so I have a 1/2-inch National Pipe Thread valve, so I can valve it off, and then all the air won't dump out of the hose going through the house. Or I can control that if I want. So I got to figure out all the fittings I have laying around. I got to figure out how I'm going to go from this, which will work here, I believe. I think this is the right size for here. I'm 100% sure it's the right size for here. Yep, it is. I'm going to have to go from this to this 1/2-inch, which I think I have the adapter. And I do. I have this adapter. So this adapter will go into here, like this and that. So I got to figure out what side I want to put this valve. Do I want to put this ball valve on this side? Probably not. Probably want to stick it down like this. So let's see, if I stick it down like this, it cuts off like that. Maybe I don't want it like that. So I would be doing like that. The alternative would be I would be doing it like this. And I think I like it like this. Okay, so I'm not going to film it, but I'm going to put the thread tape on all this and make up all the joints. Okay, and we're back. It's all made up. I have the ball valve off, so let's see if it plugs in. Perfect. And then you open it. Perfect. And then that's it for this end. The hose, I'll cut this off square. It'll go straight into there. Okay, so now we just had to figure out what we're going to do in the laundry room. So laundry room, we know we have this coming in, and I'm going to use this hose that I was using to go from the air regulator to the figure, which I need to use this male side. So this male side has to plug into the air regulator. So this air regulator has a 1/2-inch push connect tubing. So I can either use the straight one or I can use the elbow that I have. But that has to go over here on the inlet. And the outlet, I got to use one of these. Now, I didn't think about this. I might have not thought ahead. This is a male and that's a male. Males and males do not go together. So I need to get an adapter, male to female, to this, which I don't think I have, so I might have to run out to Harbor Freight. And crapsky doodles. I do have enough stuff to make it. Oh, sorry about that. I do have enough stuff to make it work. I just wasn't thinking ahead. Okay, so what I was thinking about, or what I need to do, is take this off and replace it with this one on here. And then this adapter here, use that to go from the output of here to this. And then I had to decide, I'm going to go in the house now and decide if I'm going to use the straight or the elbow. So I'll do all that off camera. Okay, the connections are all made. I swapped the quick disconnect out, put one on here, and I decided to use a 90 for here. So let's go ahead and mount this in the laundry room. Okay, so originally I was planning on mounting it on this wall, like down here. But the problem is the output, this is input, this is output, and it would be totally away from the door where the air hose is going to go. Plus, I don't want this to be in the way. So, and then I could have swapped this, but it would have been really involved because I would have had to swap the gauge and everything around. I didn't feel like swapping anything around. So what I'm going to do instead, and the reason I put the 90 on it, is I'm going to mount it back here, because back here it looks kind of clean. It's deep recess, so the dryer's not going to bounce hit it, and I can get to it easily. So I have a stud finder. So there's a stud in the corner. Yikes. There's a stud over here. Stud starts here. So there's a stud here. That's a little farther away than I want it. I guess that doesn't look too bad. Okay, so we'll mount it right here. Okay, I got 2 drywall screws with washes. Okay, so stud's right there. Is it crooked? Looks a little crooked. That looks straight there. Can't really tell. There we go, we're all mounted up. Okay, all I'm going to do is put a little masking tape on the hose and shove the hose into that hole with masking tape around it so it creates a seal. But we're pretty much done. Okay, so we're ready to power up for the first time, or air up for the first time. See if we have any leaks. So I'm going to leave the valve off and we're just going to air up and the compressor is going to kick on, so we're going to let the compressor fill up first. Okay, compressor kicked off. It's at 140, a notch below 140, and the secondary regulator is all the way kicked up. I wonder how much pressure I should be sending out there. I probably shouldn't be sending full tank pressure. We'll do 100 psi even. Okay, and then cut over here. So this is my poor man's air dryer concept. So normally I fill them up with ice, but since I'm not running full shows or anything, I just brought out these ice packs. And then hopefully it'll cool down, catch in that water trap, and then continue on to the house. Okay, so let's air this up and see if we have any leaks. Okay, so we're at 3 notches below 150, and oh, my phone's going off. Let's get. It's 11:25. Okay, so it held pressure just fine. No leaks at all, so that's great. But the only problem is, I moved the figure in the house. I had a friend come over and he helped me lift the whole thing. They're pretty light, but I wanted to lift the whole thing with the valves attached. I didn't want to detach the valves just to move the figure. So we have the figure in the house. I bought a moving blanket from Harbor Freight so that when I work on them, I don't mess up the carpet. But anyway, I went to turn on the air, and over in the shed, a hole blew out. So I had to cut a segment off, and luckily I had enough to still attach it to the air compressor. So that's a little concerning. I'm hoping that maybe this is an isolated incident and that maybe it might have caught on something sharp in the shed when I pressurized it. But for now on, I'm going to pressurize it real slow when I do bring on the pressure through the airline. That is a little concerning. But fortunately, it blew out in an exposed part, and I had plenty of slack to cut it off and still have plenty of hose. So if that happens in the conduit in the ground or under the house, I'm kind of SOL. I mean, I could always put a coupler, but and it is concerning that it blew out so soon, but hopefully it got caught on something in the shed, I'm hoping, and I won't have any problems in the future, but only time will tell. So, spoiler alert, I already ran a show and it worked fine. I had plenty of airflow. There was no airflow problems, which is cool. I guess I'll run it a little bit and that'll be all for this video. The one thing you will notice is that inside the house, I knew that the exhaust was loud, but inside the house it's kind of exacerbated. So the next step is definitely making my own exhaust mufflers for the valve bank. So oh, I gotta turn on the air.